¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estáis? Esto es una breve introducción a la entrevista que vais a ver a continuación. Os dejo enseguida con el equipo de ingenieros que ha desarrollado la Madone generación 8, pero quería compartir con vosotros dos puntos que sería importante que valoraseis de esta entrevista, que no tenéis por qué saber, pero que yo quiero compartir con vosotros, porque desgraciadamente no es habitual acudir a la presentación de una bicicleta y poder tener a todo el equipo de desarrollo delante tuyo para preguntarle absolutamente lo que quieras. Estoy más habituado a encontrarme en esas presentaciones normalmente a gente del equipo de marketing, que son muy profesionales, todo el respeto para ellos, pero en el momento que haces preguntas sobre el desarrollo de la bicicleta, no sobre los datos finales, sobre la ficha técnica final del vehículo en cuestión, pues sueles tener de vuelta o bien respuestas muy corporativas o bien respuestas vacías que no te dan realmente información concluyente. En este caso tenemos la suerte de que Trek ha puesto a nuestro alcance, ha traído directamente desde Estados Unidos aquí a España a todo el equipo de desarrollo, a todos los ingenieros, y ya no solo nos los ponen delante y esconden a la gente de marketing fuera de la habitación, sino que además nos han permitido hacerle cualquier tipo de pregunta. Esto tampoco es habitual, desgraciadamente. No sé si será porque son americanos y tienen una mentalidad más abierta y realmente no les da miedo a cualquier tipo de pregunta que le puedan hacer, pero ahí están. Así que, por favor, valorar estas dos cosas porque no es habitual y a mí me encantaría poder traeros de cualquier marca, de cualquier empresa del sector, vídeos como este. Disfrutémoslo. Y nada, si os gusta, pegarle un like muy grande y estoy convencido de que vais a escuchar cosas, respuestas, información que no se suelen escuchar habitualmente, al menos de boca de un ingeniero, del creador de una bicicleta. Sed felices.
Okay guys, let's go. First one. The decision of going for just one versatile bike instead of having two different platforms in your catalog, one for climbing, the Emonda, and then the Aero, the previous Madone. Is it a decision made in the designers department, the marketing department, the direction department, a little bit of everything?
I think the idea originated, I would say, from the product group, but it was because of the capabilities of the engineering. So the idea, maybe we've had it for a long time, but we never thought that we could make a bike as aero as our most aero bike and also a bike that's as light as our lightest bike. And it was because of some discoveries and development within the engineering department that finally we said we can do it. And so it's not just an idea of if we could do it, would it be a good idea, but it's also a concept of is it possible and can we execute it? And when both of those things came together, that was really the point where we said, okay, we bring them both together and we make a bike that's as fast as the fastest bike we've ever made and as light as the lightest bike we've ever made.
Okay, thank you. I understand there are technical benefits on the new Madone that improve the performance of the previous Madone and the Emonda in many ways. But I would like to ask you if merging two bikes in one has additional benefits for the company. I'm thinking maybe about sales, logistics, cost reductions, and so on.
For sure there's benefits, I think, to everyone for simplification, and that's the way that we think of it, is that sometimes there's too many decisions and too difficult of decisions for both the rider or the bike shop in order for them to be able to say which bike do I want to buy or which bike do I want to sell. And if we can make that decision simpler by saying this is the right bike for more riders and there are no compromises to it, it benefits the rider, it benefits the bike shops, it benefits us by making sure that we can always have that bike in stock and better availability. So that benefit flows all the way through both Trek and our dealers and to the riders themselves. And we believe in that concept that everyone benefits from having one bike that just simplifies the decision for them of saying this is the right bike for you to race or ride all the time.
Okay. Once the idea of having just one versatile bicycle was on the table, how did the design process started? Completely from scratch, or maybe taking the previous Madone as a main reference, or taking the Emonda as a main reference?
For sure we had to take both bikes as a reference because that started with the idea of we don't want to compromise on aerodynamics from our most aerodynamic bike and weight from our lightest weight bike. Really, the very beginning of the development started as an Emonda. So at that time we had just launched the Emonda that is on sale today, and already we said, okay, well, how can we make that bike better? We could make it lighter, we could make it faster. and we started developing tube shapes for that bike. And once we started testing it, then that was all of a sudden when we discovered, wow, we can make a very light and very fast bike because this new family of tube shapes that we discovered. And through that process, that's when, again, both products sort of started to come together, and all along the way, we're making sure that the aerodynamics are just as good as a Madone and the weight is just as good as a Emonda, because we don't want one bike that's in the middle, that's not as fast and not as light for the riders that still value those things. And so we continued on that path. But the first idea started with, this is our next Emonda project, and that's when engineering really started the process.
Okay, and how was the process of transferring the new Madone from the digital concept to the first real prototypes?
Do you want to take this? Do you want to talk about our prototype process maybe?
Yeah. So we, I guess we got our first prototypes to ride. So our prototype had a few different variations. We got those variations first in, I guess, late 2022. And I guess that was the California ride test.
Yep.
In like October of 2022. And that was like our first time riding that bike. We really didn't know how it would perform, and that was internal test riders, like very kept close, but the feedback was really positive. And so then we took 3 variants of that prototype to the Lidl Trek team camp in December of that year. And again, it was only 2 riders, like kept pretty close, but the feedback was like really good. And so at that point we knew we had something that was like pretty exciting.
And so maybe that tells a little bit about how long that we even developed the prototypes. Of those were carbon rideable bikes, already more than 2 years from now that we were starting to develop those bikes and test different stiffnesses and ideas in a full carbon bike as a prototype.
Okay. Well, this was another question. How long did it take the whole development process of the new Madone from the first day?
Again, because the idea started with, this is an Emonda project, and we start with making the Emonda lighter and faster. Really, that project started 3.5 years ago, which is a long time in bike development. Normally that cycle is more like 2.5 years or something, and this one was extended further because the technical challenge and importance was just that much greater for this one bike in order for us to make sure that we're doing it as a no compromises platform.
Okay. Could you list the number of development phases that the company did for this new Madone? I mean, like listing, I don't know, digital designing and then 3D printing and then carbon molds, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the order of operation is it does start in digital. So we do both FEA and CFD in the computer to test how light something will be and how stiff something will be, but also how aerodynamic it will be. And so actually in the presentation we showed 25 different kinds of bikes that we had tried in digital, and that gets refined down to 3 or 4 different designs still in digital, and we assess how light do we think this design will be, how fast do we think this design will be. We then take it from digital form to, we machined aluminum versions of those bikes to be able to put into the wind tunnels so that we can verify that our digital model represents the physical version of that bike, to make sure that we fully understand the aerodynamic benefits of the bikes. Once we did the aluminum versions of the bike, then that's when we take it into a carbon bike and do a prototype mold. So the prototype version changes a little bit from the final bike that you see. The isospeed area was a little bit different. Some of the tube sections were a bit different. We didn't translate the sizing, so there was still a traditional 56 centimeter instead of our new medium large. But we used that frame for over a year to develop the carbon laminate and do ride testing on it to make sure that we knew that we could get the bike light enough in an actual production setting, and that the bike behaved the way that we wanted to. And only from that step of, once we sort of decided this is how stiff we want the bike, this is how well we want to ride and how light we can do it, that we translated that into the final production molds. And then we do that same laminate development cycle in the production version of the bike to really optimize the carbon on the bike, and then more or less the bike goes into production after it passes testing.
Could I ask how many molds did it require? Talking about the carbon phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's a prototype mold that is of one size that Jordan just spoke about, but like I think another interesting point is even before that, we were doing R&D using the mold from the previous generation bikes. There was R&D like 3 years ago done using the mold from the Gen 7 Madone to make learnings in terms of like materials and process that then flowed into this bike.
So as an example, maybe the isoflow area is for sure from a laminate and carbon perspective a very difficult section to get right. And we knew that there were several different and better ways of us making that area to save weight and to get better stiffness out of the area. And so we could focus on improving the old Madone and its molds and then take all of those learnings and translate it to the new one in that same area.
Right. Yeah, and same thing with the fork. So the fork tool from the Gen 7 Madone was used to develop this new one-piece molding technology.
What was the first impression of the pro cyclists at Little Trek when they rode the new Madone for the first time? Did they think it was a new Emonda or a new Madone, or what they thought?
Well, you were there.
Yeah, so this was like December 2022. So Tony Galopin and Otto Vergaard rode it. They knew it was a Madone because we told them. And those, I think Tony normally rides an Emonda and Otto normally rode a Gen 7 Madone. So we had like a variety of perspectives. And they were pretty blown away. Like I think especially for it being that early in the project. I think Jordan had a quote up yesterday, but I think it was Tony who said like if he was given that bike, like he would race it right away. There was, I mean, obviously we made a lot of improvements since that prototype, but even at that phase, they were like we'd race this right now, it's sweet. Yeah, they were pretty excited.
And I think one of the other interesting ideas about the team was that we presented them the idea even before they started riding the bikes. And they understood the idea of that one bike could be better for them than having two bikes and having to decide. But they were also very skeptical at the idea that we could do it. They thought, you're going to make too many compromises. If we talked to Mads, he was going to say, you can make a bike lighter, and okay, I would like that, but you can't make it slower because to me the speed is the most important factor. And he's like, and you're not going to do it. I don't think that you guys can do it. And so for us that was a little bit of a challenge to say, okay, there's a very high level of expectation from these professional riders. This is their profession. They depend on us to make sure that we're providing them with material that allows them to compete and win. And so now that they've ridden the bike and tested it extensively, they're believers in the idea. But it started with, we like the idea, we don't think you can do it, to now they are like, you did it. That's great.
So that's all for me.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.